Hola, muy buenos días, tardes. Muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros en esta quinta edición de Black Canvas. Yo soy Matilda Hague, fui jurada el año pasado de Black Canvas y hoy estoy aquí, tengo el gran gusto de poder presentar a dos directores y un productor que todos están en la competencia de los cortos internacionales. Internacionales de cortometraje, y aquí vamos a estar moderando una sesión de Q&A. Primero presento a Sebastián Schjaer, que está aquí de Buenos Aires, según yo.
Sí.
Eres el director de Espacio Sideral, que se presentó en la quincena de realizadores en Cannes. Tu película obviamente está disponible en Film en Latino. Luego tenemos Olivier Séror, que es el productor de Flotando, una película francesa que, bueno, no pudo acompañarnos. The director couldn't accompany us today, Guillaume Lillo, but we're here with one of the producers. Thank you so much for being with us, Olivier. And finally, we also have Lucas Ackermann, who's the director of Saludos desde el Anthropocene. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's a pleasure to be leading this Q&A. Okay, so sorry, I'm going to be switching in between Spanish and English, but I wanted to start with Sebastián. Voy a pasar a lo español, Sebastián.
En inglés, si preferís la pregunta, está bien.
¿Sí?
Así es.
¿Está bien?
It's okay if you
Bueno,
prefer.
Yeah, so that everyone here can understand, but then maybe. So it seems like this is your previous film was in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, La Omisión.
Yes.
Yes,
The Mission.
And I was just wondering, you had two shorts before, and then you did a feature film, and it seems that you went back to the short format. And I was just wondering about that decision. I saw on a few pages that it might have been a feature film as well. I don't know if maybe those pages were mistaken, but I'm just wondering about this decision of going back to the short format. If you could talk a little bit about this.
Well, it's an interesting question. Since at first I thought like you that it was making short films, and then the next step was obviously making a feature film. But then I was interested in moving back in a certain way. But I don't feel it like going one step back, because I think short films are not. I don't agree necessarily with this idea that the feature film is something you arrive after doing short films and then you had to stay doing feature films, because both are cinema, and I think that what's interesting is to make movies. I don't mind that much about the duration of the movie. So in a certain way, I guess that short films somehow they allowed more freedom, not only in the way of financing them, but also in the way of you can experiment more, and you can tell the story from different as an exercise, I think, in a way. And I like to think about movies and about cinema like something I'm exercising all the time, and not only once in, I don't know, my feature film, it was 5 years from the beginning, from the first version of the script until we premiered the film. And to be honest, I wanted to make movies, and I didn't want to wait 5 years. So we started to do this film with just a couple of friends, a very small production in terms of budget, but in a way we shot quite a lot, because it started as an experiment. We went with a friend to the airport to shoot planes and children waving hands and saying hello and goodbye to the planes. And from that small idea, the whole process began. So we started to, it was in a certain way, two ways of different curiosities. One was what happens when you go to the city and you start to shoot situations you like, and on the other hand, what happens when you work with a very small crew. And I was very interested in all the people that were part of that crew. We were only 6 people. We went inside in a car and we were shooting around the city. So that kind of experimentation, in a way, I think it's much more possible in a short film. So for me, it was, in a certain way, a beautiful experience to shoot a short film after the seriousness of the feature film. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if maybe Lucas, I think if I'm not mistaken, this is your like a final project for studies. So I'm wondering if you have thoughts about the format. Usually at the end of a study, it is a short film that is produced, but I'm not sure if that's the case for you. Like, can you just talk about the format in general of your film, and if there was, like with Sebastian, some sort of specific desire to make short or a feature?
Well, as a matter of fact, it was quite strict on that matter. We had to do a short film, and we were actually quite limited on the duration of it as well. It's I know from other film schools that they are also allowed to do longer formats, but with our school it was quite strict. Yeah, 15 minutes max, which we didn't like at some point, but we had to short it down. And there were words that were half an hour long, and then they said no, it has to be shorter, and we had to fight with it. But in the end, I think it was nice to have this restriction. And yeah, so far only short films. I wish I had the possibility to do a feature, but we'll need some more time. But I also really appreciate the short format, also to watch it. I think it's very poetic, and as Sebastian mentioned, it has a lot of experimentation, which you don't find that usually with feature-length films, because they always have to deliver something, have to follow a story. And with short films, there's, in my opinion, quite a lot of freedom, also in what I've seen at other festivals. Yeah. So I can imagine always switching between the formats.
Mm-hmm. Olivier, I don't know if you can speak about the format, but maybe I don't want to give the film away. This is my worry, but I know that the format, from seeing the film and especially the end credits, there's something very specific about the film. I don't know if there's a desire to sort of not spoil that from the director, if that makes sense, but, or can I say?
This is Guillaume's second film, and I produce. He works the same way always. I will tell you about that. But let me tell you first. Guillaume would have loved to be with you, to talk about the film, but he doesn't speak English and Spanish. And as a matter of fact, there's a line about that in his film. But also he's very shy. And the fact that he's very shy is part of the answer. Guillaume is an editor. He's working as an editor, but he cannot manage to be on a set. He's too shy for that. So he invented a way to make fictions, to make films, without shooting. And it was a surprise at first for his first film. And now people start to know the way he works, so it's not a spoil. Plus, he doesn't hide the way he works in this film, opposite to his first film. The first film looks like a fiction, totally, but it's made with images he found on the internet, on YouTube. It's in the garbage of the internet. This film is like that too, but he shows it. He doesn't. He's not afraid. It's part of the process to show that. People are singing around me. I hope it's not too difficult to hear me. So it's part of the process now to show You know, it's like haute couture, like to show the needle. You know, it's part of the process. So it's not a spoil. You can see the film knowing that it's made out of things that he didn't shoot at all. But it's a fiction, and it's very personal, and it talks about his own problems in a way that I think makes them universal. Everybody can relate to that and be moved, be touched. Voila.
Thank you. Yeah, that answers my question really well. And so again, a little bit. So it's funny because looking at these three films together, Guillaume's is really about the digital era, but it seemed that both yours, Lucas's, and Sebastian, you're exploring. I don't know if you've seen each other's films, but Lucas, you have this really poetic image of young people writing letters and burying them into the ground. I don't know if you could speak a little bit more about this like form of like bringing the letter and this form of communication into the film, and what is that like a personal thing to you, or I don't know if you could speak a little bit more about that.
Yes, I started off the project with really this word that is included in the title that shocked me, right? This geological term of the Anthropocene. When I stumbled upon it, I was quite astonished by just the magnitude of it and what it entails, this word. And then we were looking for ways in how to contrast it or how to personalize it in a way. And then we thought, okay, we will most certainly show mountains and stones and all these like geological appearances. And then I thought, okay, what's contrast to that, right? Paper. Then you have on one hand you have the stones and rocks that endure for millions of years, and on the other hand you have paper, you have letters that are quite short-lived, right? So this was one strain of thought that led to it, but also really to find an access to this really difficult topic, in my opinion, or something that really concerns everybody. And then we thought, okay, the most humble way or to approach it is really by personal letters. And it's really that our protagonists, they chose the location, so we chose them, and then they gave us the locations, and the voiceover of the film is really composed by their letters. So it really was us following them and them giving us like the structure of the film, and then we try to work with it. So yeah.
Thank you. Sebastian, you also work with these sort of different analog ways of communication. I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure, but radio, as you present it in this film, so there's like a pirate radio that they set up in the neighborhood. So I think it's technically analog, and these letters again come back in your short film. So I'm wondering if you could talk about a little bit about that process or that choice of showing these modes of communication in such a digital era. I mean, look at us now. I think you're muted.
It was for not disturbing the others. In a certain way, the sideral space is about something who is missing. It's about somebody we never see. And I was wondering how to make a story about this girl. And in a certain way, the communication in letters was the main idea of the film. I don't know in English how you say correspondencia epistolar, which was it's okay. It's two characters,
letters.
Letters, and so the film is just that. It's two letters, but those letters are transmitted in a pirate radio in the neighborhood. So that was a kind of excuse to show these planets. So the short film goes from something very physical, that it's a letter, to something very ethereal, that is the sound in the space, in the sidereal space, in the galaxies. And that relation between something very analog and something very abstract, something very concrete and something very abstract, was also an idea I wanted to explore. And also it's also, the short film is also about the sound and how the sound can make the images become something completely different. And I think that's that idea comes also as Guillaume. I am also an editor. I work most of the time as an editor in films. And I think that the editing room is kind of the table for make experimentation between different materials. And those materials could be the image of a letter, which appears in the short film, the sound of that letter being written, and also the something very ethereal and digital in the way these images are made. So in that moment was what interested me the most, and that was also a way of communication from something very small to something very big. But I don't know if no sé si respondí bien la pregunta.
Sí. O sea, justo, o sea, mi pregunta era eso, ¿no? O sea, como esa exploración de esos medios de comunicación que no tienen tanta, no sé, como que ya están un poco perdidos hoy en día.
Okay,
Like
sí, maybe si la puedo decir en español. Sorry,
sí,
my English is not that good, but maybe in Spanish I can express better. Sí, me gustaba mucho la idea de que alguien que no está deja una carta que no dice mucho sobre aquello, como sobre los motivos por los que no está, y entonces al mismo tiempo esas cartas funcionan como un modo de decir algo, pero de dar cuenta de una cierta incomunicación entre estas dos personas. Y esa incomunicación al mismo tiempo se transmite alrededor de toda una ciudad a través de una radio pirata, y esas ondas de sonido son las que pasan desde una maquinita que está en una terraza hasta esos planetas en el espacio sideral. Y en ese intersticio, en ese lugar que hay entre las dos, entre estas dos situaciones, es donde siento yo que aparece como la carta en su abstracción y en su materialidad. Por eso me interesaba también traer, no sé, las imágenes de archivo, que son estas de los planetas, con imágenes más documentales que filmamos, con una historia de ficción que se articula con estos dos elementos, y finalmente con los dibujos o con la palabra escrita y no solo oral. Y ahí es donde en la mezcla de todas estas cosas creo que aparece la mesa de montaje como un lugar donde se aglutina, se pega, y estos elementos adquieren como otra relevancia. Es como en el choque, creo yo, de estas múltiples formas donde el corto adquiere como su espesor, como la falta de especificidad o la especificidad producto de múltiples especificidades. Y entonces ahí es donde siento que hay algo que me interesaba trabajar en torno a la comunicación y a los modos del decir, del hablar, del mostrar.
Muchísimas gracias.
No, sorry for my English.
No, it's okay, obviously. Olivier, to connect that sort of story back to Guillaume's film. So again, in both of these two films, we have someone who has a very present voice, the like voiceover, the voz en off, but we never see that person. So there's a sort of, in Sebastian's case, and in communication, what do you think maybe Guillaume intended with not showing the characters, and what do you think that if the effect of the voice has in that way?
Okay. First, I'm sorry for the interruption. I have to explain something. Tomorrow is Guillaume's premiere in France. It's a private premiere for the people who worked with it and with us. And so tonight I had to find a bar where we can, have a drink after the film. So I could not be at home. That's why I sat in a bar, and now there's all this mess around me. So sorry. Voilà. Now I can try to answer the question, which has no relation to what I just said. Guillaume's work is to try to find a way to make characters live without showing them, without showing their faces. It's very important to show a face in a movie. It's so powerful. But he cannot do it as his fictions are not made with images he films. So if there's a cat in a film, there are 10 cats that will feature the one cat because he found images of one cat. But a person, so he has to find different ways. One of the ways is his voice. Others are to travel in the mind of the character with mental images of what he's dealing with, what he's living. So it started as how can I make character live without filming, and it became experimental on the way as a need. So the voice is one of the processes, and he speaks. It's him speaking. He plays in his movie. His voice. And his voice tells a lot because it's both very sad, because what it expresses is very sad, but he's very funny. He's got a distance. And he's like Nanny Moretti or even Woody Allen is using his sadness and his despair with a distance in his film and makes it very funny. So I don't know if that answers to the question. If you need to know more.
No, it does. I think it does. I was actually going to ask you I speak French, so I sort of caught a humor that's very subtle in the film, but it's even in the title. I mean, in French, the title is perché, which I understand is also something you describe people who are perché, like perched on a tree, but it means like you are crazy a little bit. And so I think that doesn't really translate as well in English or in Spanish with floating.
We had a problem with translating that, but floating works in the film when there's a double meaning about it when it's pronounced. So we decided to give this film. It's yes, it's the birdies. They are as he tells it in the film. The birdies, they are birds, but they are also all these sick, mad people he meets when he goes to get his medicines because he's very sick, or he thinks he's very sick, and goes to a mental institution to get medicine. So he meets a lot of people and sees a lot of people there. He calls birdies, so that's why they're floating, because voilà.
Right.
It's.
Thank you. I had a question for you, Lucas. You touched a little bit about. I mean, you discussed it a little bit in the last question I asked you, but this preoccupation, I guess, of climate change, as I understand it, it seems so. I think you did a wonderful job in 15 minutes of getting. I think it's 4 or 5 protagonists who have something very personal to express or to communicate. But I was wondering where do you place yourself in relationship to that question? And if you had your own sort of segment of the film, I think I was wondering like where you would have taken us, like what sort of spot you would have taken us to, and what do you think you would have said in your letter? Or do you think yours is a combination of all these letters? Did you participate in the process of writing it with them, or was it really independent? I'm wondering about the process of, in terms of that like personal relationship that you explore in the film, in the short.
Well, that's a beautiful question. Thank you. Actually, I started the process off with writing a letter myself, because when approaching all the protagonists we had in mind, or we were in, so to say, casting, right? I approached them with this disposition to write their goodbyes to a place in nature, and they were always like, okay, this is drastic or weird, right? So I wrote a letter myself to give them some understanding of it, or like to set the tone a little bit. And I wrote my letter. I wrote actually 4 of them. One of them was to a river next to where I grew up. It's the Rhine. It's one of the major rivers of Europe. And really, where I grew up, it's one big canal. All right, standing on the dam, you can really see like 50 kilometers all the way. It's all straightened out, and it was always in my childhood a place where I'd like to go, because it was nice to swim. It was nice to make a campfire or whatever. And it really took me a while to actually realize, okay, this is a canal, right? It's not a river really. It was canalized in order to submit nature to the human will, because I grew up in a region that was always struggling with floodings. So it was a reasonable step to take to make this canal. Yes, but it's a huge concrete construction, and coming to think about it, it's really immense. But it really only occurred to my mind maybe 5 or 7 years ago. Before, it was just a normal river to me. So this is the letter I wrote. And then we went through quite a big process. We met several times. They rewrote their letters, and we had to shorten it down because of the 15 minutes. And yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering about that. Sebastián, vuelvo a ti. ¿Prefieres que lo hagamos en español?
No, we can try in English again.
Okay. So you mentioned you're an editor, and I had seen that, for example, Matías Piñero, I'm pretty sure you've edited a few of his films. One of them was Isabella, if I'm not mistaken, which was shown at Blancamas last year. And from what I understand, his process is also very sort of collaborative. I mean, obviously, film is always collaborative, but more so maybe than a lot of people. And I was wondering if you could discuss a little bit about how different the process is for you when you're editing a film and when you're editing your film, and sort of like this friendship collaborations, plural, obviously, that sort of come out also in the short, of friends. I mean, I think there's a moment of like friends that are, or like she meets these people that are unknown, and then immediately they become friends. So I don't know if you could talk, I don't know, maybe this is a little bit far, but I'm just wondering if you could speak about the sort of team that you are part of, that sometimes edits, sometimes directs, and I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. In the film, in the El Espacio Sideral, there is a moment in which one of the characters says something related to these unexpected friends that she finds when she arrives to this place. And in a certain way, cinema is that, is a way of meeting unexpected friends all the time. And while I'm editing, it depends a lot of the film. Sometimes I edit in a more formal way, but many times editing is you are breathing the same air, and you share so much intimidad with directors. It's a very intimate process, editing, because you are nude and you have lots of ideas and also lots of frustrations and lots of hope and lots of happiness and everything in the same day. So it's very strange to edit a film with the different directors, and editing alone for me is what I like the most in cinema, to edit. To me, to direct is to edit. So the show, I think in that way, is not that different from Guillaume. And I like to think that the editing room I shouldn't feel never a pudor. How you say? I don't want. I want to be nude and don't matter. I don't be worrying about what I'm doing. So many times while editing, I try things that I don't like, but I want to try them again. And for example, with Matias Piñeiro, that is a director with whom I work a lot, it's we try everything we want, and we don't care a lot about if we have good or bad ideas. So this, for me, editing is a room where I can experiment freedom in a much nicer way than in the shooting. The shooting for me is a place where I have to be very effective and very organized, and I have to make 4 shots in 1 hour. But the editing room is where I can lose time and I can lose myself in these images, and I can try to put a different sound to this image, and I can try to disorganize everything. And for me, the sideral space was the reaffirmation of this process. Let's get together with some friends. Let's shoot something we think it might be interesting, but we are not very sure. We can edit what we have shot, and then we can shoot again. And this process of retroalimentation between editing and shooting is what I find much more attractive than to think an idea, to write this idea, to shoot this idea, to edit this idea. Because in that process, many times, at least for me, I'm always in the same idea. From that idea, I write, I shoot, I edit. And in this process, everything is mixed up. And I feel lost. And I like to feel lost and try to find something it was not previously thought. And that ideas is what I like the most, because I end as a different person in a way from the beginning of the process to the ending of the process. And that's because of the editing room in a way, and because these unexpected friends I met in the middle.
Beautiful response. Thank you so much. I think we have come to the end of this session, but thank you so much. Muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros hoy.
I want to say I like very much your answer also, Sebastián. And as a matter of fact, Guillaume's next film is about a process very similar to the one you just described. There are images he will take from the YouTube and the internet, and also images he will shoot, and there will be a process between the two, and that's the kind of thing that's very interesting in a new way of making images with images that already exist. And
yes,
editing is a good way.
Yes, I'm very curious about both films. Maybe then we can write in the email, because I think they are online only in Mexico, so we can exchange if you want the email.
Good idea, yes.
Fantastic. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much for being here today. And, o sea, las películas van a estar disponibles en Film Latino, en México, y les invito a verlos todos esos cortos maravillosos. Muchísimas gracias por asistir y y
Gracias
nos
a vos.
estamos viendo.
Merci beaucoup.
De